Franz Gabriel Capone, born January 17, 1899, nicknamed Scarface, was an American gangster and businessman who attained notoriety during the Prohibition era as the co-founder and boss of the Chicago outfit. His 7-year reign as crime boss ended when he went to prison at age 33. Capone was born in New York City in 1899 to Italian immigrant parents. He joined the 5 Points Gang as a teenager, and became a bouncer in organized crime premises such as brothels. In his early 20s, he moved to Chicago and became a bodyguard and trusted factotum for Johnny Torrio, head of a criminal syndicate that illegally supplied alcohol, the forerunner of the outfit, and was politically protected through the Union Siciliana. A conflict with the North Side Gang was instrumental in Capone's rise and fall. Torrio went into retirement after North Side gunmen almost killed him, handing control to Capone. Capone expanded the bootlegging business through increasingly violent means, but his mutually profitable relationships with Mayor William Hale Thompson and the city's police meant he seemed safe from law enforcement. Capone apparently reveled in attention, such as the cheers from spectators when he appeared at ball games. He made donations to various charities and was viewed by many as modern-day Robin Hood. However, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, in which 7 gang rivals were murdered in broad daylight, damaged Chicago's and Capone's image, leading influential citizens to demand government action and newspapers to dub Capone public enemy number 1. The federal authorities became intent on jailing Capone and prosecuted him in 1931 for tax evasion. He was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. Capone showed signs of neurosyphilis early in his sentence and became increasingly debilitated before being released after almost 8 years of incarceration. On January 25, 1947, Capone died of cardiac arrest after suffering a stroke.
Frank Nitti, born Francesco Raffaele Nitto, January 27, 1886, was an Italian-born American gangster in Chicago. One of Al Capone's top henchmen, Nitti was in charge of all money flowing through the operation. Nitti later succeeded Capone as boss of the Chicago outfit. The day before his scheduled grand jury appearance, Nitti had breakfast with his wife in their home. When his wife left for church, Nitti told her he planned to take a walk, then began to drink heavily. He then loaded a .32 caliber revolver, put it in his coat pocket, and walked 5 blocks to a local railroad yard. Conductor William F. C. Bauer and switchman L. M. Barnett and E. H. Moran were riding in the caboose, backing their train slowly southward, over an ungated Cermak road. The workers spotted an oblivious Nitti walking on the track away from them and shouted a warning. Nitti walked off the tracks, staggering towards the fence. 2 shots rang out. The workers thought Nitti was shooting at them, then realized he was trying to shoot himself in the head. The first shot fired by Nitti's unsteady hand missed and passed through his fedora. The second bullet slammed into the right side of his jaw and exited through the top of his head.
Angelo, Bloody Angelo, Genna, February 3, 1898, was an Italian-born Chicago bootlegger and organized crime leader during the Prohibition era. The leader of his own Sicilian crime family, he was best known for his war with the North Side gang leader, Charles Dean O'Banion. Genna masterminded the assassination of O'Banion in November 1924. Genna and his brothers then fought the North Side's new leader, George Bugs Moran. But almost 7 months later, in May 1925, Moran chased Angelo in a high-speed car chase and shot him to death. In June and July, 2 of Angelo's brothers were killed, while the other 3 brothers fled.
J. Wojciechowski, also known as Hymie Weiss, born January 25, 1898, October 11, 1926, was an American mob boss who became a leader of the Prohibition-era North Side Gang and a bitter rival of Al Capone. He was known as the only man Al Capone feared. Jury selection for a murder trial of Joe Saltus, with whom Wojciechowski sought an alliance, began on October 11, 1926, and Wojciechowski and 4 of his men were cited there. With him that day were his bodyguard Sam Peller, gangster Patty Murray, attorney William W. O'Brien, and Benjamin Jacobs, an investigator for O'Brien. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, Wojciechowski and his men left for their State Street headquarters, Schofield's Flowers. Quintet parked their cars on Superior Street and rounded the corner to cross State. As they did, 2 gunmen hidden in a nearby rooming house opened fire with a submachine gun and shotgun. Wojciechowski and Murray were fatally wounded by this first burst. William O'Brien was hit 4 times and staggered into a nearby stairwell. At the initial sound of gunfire, panicked Sam Peller drew his .38 and instinctively fired a shot in the general direction of shooters. This bullet unintentionally struck Wojciechowski as he collapsed onto the sidewalk. Peller and Jacobs, both wounded, staggered back the way they had come. Bullets followed them the whole way and some chipped the cornerstone of the Holy Name Cathedral directly across the street.
Charles Dean O'Banion, July 8, 1892 was an American mobster who was the main rival of Johnny Torrio and Al Capone during the brutal Chicago bootlegging wars of the 1920s. The newspapers of his day made him better known as Dion O'Banion, although he never went by that first name. He led the North Side Gang until 1924, when he was shot and killed, reportedly by Frankie Yale, John Scalise, and Albert Anselmi. Over the next few days, Brooklyn gangster Frankie Yale and others visited Schofield's O'Banion's flower shop to discuss floral arrangements. However, the real purpose of these visits was to memorize the store layout for the hit on O'Banion. On the morning of November 10, 1924, O'Banion was clipping chrysanthemums in Schofield's back room. Yale entered the shop with Genna gunman John Scalise and Albert Anselmi. When O'Banion and Yale shook hands, Yale grasped O'Banion's hand in a tight grip. At the same time, Scalise and Anselmi stepped aside and fired 2 bullets into O'Banion's chest and 2 into his throat. One of the killers fired a final shot into the back of his head as he lay face down on the floor.
Machine Gun Jack McGurn, July 2, 1902 born Vincenzo Antonio Giboldi, was a small-time select boxer, Sicilian-American mobster and key member of Al Capone's Chicago outfit. McGurn is associated with planning the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, though this association has not been proven. Although police charged McGurn in the case citation needed, he was never brought to trial largely due to his blonde alibi girlfriend and later wife Louise Rolfe, who claimed they spent the whole day together. Less than 3 years later, McGurn, by then impoverished and abandoned by his fellow gangsters, was assassinated by 3 men with pistols on February 15, 1936, one day after the 7th anniversary of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. He was bowling at the 2nd Floor Avenue Recreation Bowling Alley, at 805 N Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago.
Vincent Drucci, also known as the Schemer, born Vincenzo D'Ambrosio, January 1, 1898, was a Sicilian-American mobster during Chicago's Prohibition era who was a member of the North Side Gang, Al Capone's best-known rivals. A friend of Dean O'Banion, Drucci succeeded him by becoming co-leader. He is the only U.S. organized crime boss to have been killed by a policeman. Born in Chicago, Illinois, to Sicilian parents, After serving in the U.S. Navy, he returned to Chicago and started committing small-time crimes such as breaking open pay telephone coin boxes. He joined Dean O'Banion's North Side Gang. After O'Banion's death, the North Side Gang was successively headed by Hymie Weiss. Though a leading member of the relatively small gang, Drucci acted as enforcer and was actively involved in numerous violent incidents. On one occasion, when ambushed in the street by gunmen with a Capone trademark drive-by, he charged at the assailants and tried to give chase in a hijacked car. Drucci was believed to have been responsible for a November 30, 1926 incident at a Chicago North Side garage. On April 4, 1927, Chicago police arrested Drucci, finding a concealed .45 pistol. Drucci objected to being held by the arm while they were waiting for the car, and insulted Hillside, who responded with a slap. He then drew and brandished his gun and threatened to shoot Drucci. In the car, the argument continued, but what happened next was a matter of dispute. Later, the policeman who had been present during the incident supported Hillsyde's version of events, that Drucci, while announcing his intention, had lunged for Hillsyde's gun, but Hillside had drawn back then shot Drucci. Drucci's two associates gave a very different account, asserting that a scuffle started after Hillside punched Drucci, causing the driver to halt the car at the roadside, whereupon Hillside had got out on the running board before drawing and firing at Drucci, who was shot while sitting in the car, handcuffed with his hands in his lap. Hit in the arm, leg, and abdomen, Drucci collapsed, dying on the floor of the car. Sam Giancana, born Salvatore Giancana, June 15, 1908, was a Sicilian-American mobster known for being the boss of the criminal Chicago outfit from 1957 to 1966. After Giancana's return to the U.S., the police detailed officers to guard his house in River Forest, Illinois, but on the night of June 19, 1975, shortly before he was scheduled to appear before the church committee, which was investigating CIA and Cosa Nostra's collusion, someone recalled the police detail. A gunman later entered Giancana's basement kitchen and shot him in the back of the head as he was frying sausage and peppers. After the murder of Union Siciliana President Pasqualino Pazzi Lolordo, Giunta became the new president of the Siciliana. In 1929 he unsuccessfully tried to organize a revolt against Al Capone's gang. As a result, according to legend, Giunta and his co-conspirators, Albert Anselmi and John Scalise, were beaten and shot to death by Capone at a party. Bodies were found the next day in Hammond, Indiana.